The late afternoon sun painted the room in gold. Dust particles swirled gently in the light as Clara moved through the bedroom, tidying with the quiet precision of someone trying to distract themselves. The world outside murmured with suburban calm, birds calling distantly, a neighbor's lawn mower humming down the street. But inside, everything was still. Too still. She reached into the drawer, retrieving a cloth, intending to wipe down the back of the cabinet. Her fingers brushed against something smooth, rounded edges, a weight she recognized too late. Her breath caught. It was still there. A vivid, unmistakable object. She held it, frozen in a moment of careless disbelief. I locked the door, she thought. Didn't I? Then, a soft creak, the sound of a door shifting against its frame. Her heart jolted as she spun around. There, standing at the threshold, was Luca. He wasn't supposed to be home. Not yet. Tall, lean, with dark, tousled hair that fell just above striking blue eyes. He looked like someone pulled out of a memory and dropped into the wrong moment. His gaze moved past her face and landed squarely on the object in her hand. Clara's fingers flinched. She dropped it, instinctively like a hot coal, and grabbed a throw pillow from the bed, clutching it awkwardly to her chest. Luca, she stammered, voice tight. You weren't supposed to be back yet. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he leaned against the doorway casually as if they'd just run into each other at the grocery store. But there was a flicker in his eyes, a mix of amusement, curiosity, and something harder to name. What's that? He asked. There was a hint of mischief in his tone, but beneath it, a deliberate steadiness. Not teasing. Not quite. Just watching. Clara's face burned. It's none of your business, she said too quickly, her throat dry. He tilted his head, the beginnings of a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. You don't have to be embarrassed, he replied, voice low. Really? Just surprising. That's all. Surprising. The word lodged itself like a stone in her chest. She wanted to laugh, cry, disappear. He was her stepson, 23. He worked at the brewery in town and usually didn't come home until late. He had no place here. No right to see her like this, unguarded, vulnerable, exposed in a way that went beyond modesty. But Luca didn't look away. He wasn't backing out of the room like a proper young man ought to. He stayed, watched, curious, unapologetically present. And something in that gaze, something in the way it held hers, it stripped away the illusion of distance. For a moment, Clara no longer saw him as just Peter's son. He stood there not as a boy, but as a man. One who looked at her not through the filter of family roles, but through the eyes of someone really seeing her. The woman she tried so hard to forget she still was. A strange warmth pooled in her chest, quickly followed by a surge of guilt so sharp it nearly made her knees buckle. This is wrong. I am his stepmother. I'm married to his father. She turned away abruptly, breaking the intensity of the moment. Luca, she said, voice firmer now. Please leave. He raised both hands, palms outward. Okay. All right. No need to get worked up. But before he stepped out, he glanced back. One last look, long, unreadable, quiet. A look that lingered long after the door clicked shut behind him. Clara sank onto the edge of the bed, pillow still clenched tightly to her chest. Her heart pounded as if she had just escaped something, or maybe barely avoided stepping over a line that once crossed, could never be uncrossed. She didn't return the object to the drawer. Couldn't. Not yet. The air in the room had shifted. It no longer felt like home. The door had closed. But silence, true silence, had just begun. Clara sat motionless for a long while. The pillow pressed tightly against her chest was no longer about modesty, but protection. shielding something she couldn't yet name. The air still hummed faintly with Luca's presence, as though it had absorbed the heat from his body, the sound of his voice, the weight of his stare. She finally stood and moved robotically through the evening routine, folded the laundry, started dinner, wiped the already clean countertops. Everything was familiar, but none of it felt like hers. The walls of the house, once filled with rhythm and predictability, now echoed differently. Offbeat, tense. When Peter came into the kitchen, she smiled instinctively, greeted him as she always did. He gave her the same nod, the same distracted thanks when dinner was served. He didn't notice the extra glass on the table or the tremor in her hand when she reached for the salt. He never noticed much these days. Since retiring, Peter had found comfort in small routines: gardening, woodworking, crossword puzzles, and left Clara to her own devices. They lived side by side, like weathered books on the same shelf. Still intact, still touching, but unopened. After dinner, Peter settled into his favorite recliner, the TV droning with another black and white western. Clara sat beside him, legs curled under herself, trying to focus on the screen. But her mind kept slipping to that moment, that look, the flash of something forbidden in Luca's eyes. At one point, she turned her head and saw him, Luca, moving down the hallway, disappearing into his room. The soft hum of music leaked through his door, a low beat that didn't belong in this quiet house. She stared at the closed door too long, then she looked back at her husband. He was asleep already, his chin resting on his chest, a half-empty glass of water on the table beside him. She could have nudged him, could have said, "Come to bed." But she didn't. She simply rose and made her way to the kitchen, just to stand there, just to breathe. A moment later, soft footsteps echoed behind her, bare feet against polished wood. She didn't turn around. "Midnight snack?" Luca asked lightly. His voice was casual, but it reached into her like a thread pulling at a loose seam. "I couldn't sleep," she said, keeping her back to him. "Me neither." He stepped to the fridge, retrieved a bottle of water, leaned against the wall. There was a pause. He exhaled. "This house," he said slowly, "it's quiet. Like too quiet sometimes." She turned to look at him. The same tousled hair, the relaxed posture. But his eyes, those held something different tonight. "What do you mean?" she asked gently. He shrugged, eyes downcast. "I guess, coming back here, it's like stepping into a life that doesn't fit anymore. Like I'm playing someone else's part." That struck a nerve. Clara felt the sting of recognition. She had lived in that feeling for years. "You're still young," she said softly. "You'll figure it out. You're smart, confident." He looked up at her with a crooked smile. "That sounds like something a mother would say." "I am your stepmother," she said, a touch of warning in her tone. "Yeah," he replied. "But sometimes you don't feel like one." The air thickened instantly. Her breath caught in her throat. She looked away, reached for a cloth to wipe the counter again. Pointless, but she needed to move, to do something. He stayed quiet for a beat, then spoke again, his voice more playful this time. "About earlier," he said. "You really don't have to be embarrassed. Seriously, we're all just human, right?" Her hand stopped mid-motion. "Luca," she said, careful now, like walking a tightrope, "let's not revisit that moment. It was an accident." "Sure," he said, lifting both hands like a truce. "Accidents happen," but there was a glint in his eye that wasn't surrender. It was understanding. And it made something flutter dangerously in her chest. He passed close by on his way out of the kitchen. Too close. She smelled the faintest trace of his cologne, something fresh, like citrus and wood. Her fingers tensed on the counter. He paused for a fraction of a second behind her, said nothing, and then the room emptied of him. Clara closed her eyes and let out a slow breath. She had always been so careful, so in control. She'd drawn clear boundaries since the day Peter introduced his adult son to her. But somehow, Luca had started to blur those lines, and the most terrifying part was, she wasn't sure if she wanted him to stop. Morning arrived quietly. The sun peeked through half-closed blinds, painting golden stripes across the kitchen tiles. The scent of freshly brewed coffee filled the air as Clara moved through her morning rhythm, preparing breakfast like she had every day for the past decade. The eggs sizzled. Toast popped. She set the table mechanically, trying to focus on the details and not the unspoken shift in her world. She told herself this was just another morning. But her nerves betrayed her. Peter entered first, his usual quiet morning followed by the rustle of the newspaper. He poured himself coffee, sat at his regular spot. Predictable, steady, unchanged. Then came the second presence, deliberately slower. Luca. He stepped into the kitchen, fresh from a shower. His dark hair still damp, curling slightly at the ends. He wore a plain t-shirt and jeans, but it didn't matter. It was his smile, the one he gave her, not Peter, that sent a pulse through her chest. Morning, he said, casual. But his gaze lingered just a beat too long. Clara forced a polite nod. Coffee's hot. Toast's ready. At the table, the three of them sat in a triangle of quiet conversation and metallic clinks. The kind of silence that wasn't silent at all, just full of things no one dared to say. But Luca was watching her. She felt it. Every time she passed the jam, the butter, the creamer, his hand seemed to find hers. Accidental. Natural. But never rushed. The first touch was fleeting, fingers grazing over the salt shaker. The second firmer. Their knuckles met while reaching for the sugar bowl. Each time, Clara tensed, looked up, only to find his eyes already on her. Steady. Searching. Peter, oblivious, grumbled about the crossword puzzle he couldn't solve. Clara tried to hold her composure. She smiled at Peter's comments, laughed at the appropriate moments, but inside she was spiraling. She needed space. Air. Escape. After the meal, as she cleared the plates, Luca stood. I'll help, he said. That alone was strange. He never stayed after breakfast. You don't have to, she replied, turning toward the sink. I want to. He was already beside her, grabbing a dish rag, sleeves pushed up. They worked in silence, the sounds of running water and clinking dishes filling the air between them. But the energy was loud. And then it happened. She reached for a glass and he reached for the same one. Their hands collided, this time with more weight. Palms pressed together briefly, fingers awkwardly entangled. It should have been a small thing. It wasn't. She looked up. So did he. Neither of them moved. You're different, he murmured, barely above the hum of the faucet. Clara blinked. What do you mean? He paused, searching her face. You're not like other women your age. She gave a breathy, uneasy laugh, trying to step back. That's very flattering, Luca. But he wasn't finished. His tone shifted. Slower. Real. It's not just that, he said. You pay attention. You really see people. Her throat tightened. I didn't think you noticed, she said quietly. I notice more than you think. She turned quickly, reaching for the sponge, focusing on scrubbing an already clean plate. Anything to look away. Anything to feel normal again. But she felt him behind her, close, too close. The air between them buzzed. Her heartbeat climbed as she rinsed the dish and set it aside, suddenly aware of every move she made. The tension was unbearable. She needed it to break. And as if summoned, Peter's voice called out from the living room. Clara? Have you seen my crossword book? She exhaled. Relief. Escape. Luca stepped back immediately, offering a small smile that said, I won't push yet. I'll let you get back to him, he said lightly. He walked away, disappearing down the hall. Clara stood at the sink for a long time. hands trembling slightly as the warm water ran over her fingers. That touch had meant nothing. It had to mean nothing, but it didn't. And she knew, somewhere deep in the part of her she didn't want to examine, that it never had. The sky darkened early that evening. Heavy clouds had rolled in by late afternoon, cloaking the house in a bluish hue. The trees outside swayed restlessly as if whispering secrets to the wind. Thunder rumbled in the distance, slow and steady like a warning too polite to be urgent. Peter retired to bed earlier than usual, rubbing his shoulder and mumbling something about the ache being worse when the weather turned. Clara kissed his forehead, tucked him in like she always did, and watched him drift off with the television still murmuring beside him. Then she was alone again. The storm had not yet broken, but the house already felt on edge, like the walls themselves were waiting for something to give. She curled up in the living room, a book resting on her lap but untouched. Her eyes flicked over the same paragraph again and again, never truly reading. Her mind was elsewhere, where it shouldn't be. The creak of the fridge door in the kitchen snapped her back. Moments later, Luca appeared in the doorway. He was barefoot, casual, holding 2 glasses, one in each hand. "Whiskey?" he asked with a smirk. She blinked. "It's a bit late for that, isn't it? Maybe? Or maybe tonight's an exception." He didn't wait for a yes. He stepped forward and placed one of the glasses on the coffee table in front of her. His fingers brushed hers, lightly, too lightly to be necessary. Clara hesitated, then picked up the glass. The first sip was sharp, burning slightly. It matched the tension that curled in her stomach. Luca sat across from her in the armchair, one leg lazily propped over the other. The soft glow of the table lamp carved shadows into the lines of his face, angular, defined, older than he looked in sunlight. "What are you reading?" he asked, nodding toward the book in her lap. "Nothing important," she replied. "Just something to pass time." He smiled faintly, taking a sip. "Is that what you do most days?" "Pastime." She didn't answer. Outside, the first crack of thunder split the air. Rain followed almost immediately, gentle at first, then louder, a rhythmic tapping on the roof, the windows, the soul. They sat in silence, the storm beginning to wrap around the house like a restless animal. Then he spoke again. "Can I ask you something?" She met his eyes. "You can ask." He didn't look at her right away. He swirled the amber liquid in his glass, watching it closely. "Do you ever feel like you need more space? Like you're slowly dissolving into someone else's life?" Clara blinked. The question hung in the air. "Sometimes," she said quietly. "I look at you," Lucas said, his gaze finally lifting to hers, "and I think you're not supposed to be fading into the background like this. You're not meant to be small." Her breath caught. She turned her eyes away, placing her glass down carefully. "Luca, don't. I'm just saying what's true. You're young. You don't understand what happens in long marriages." His voice lowered. "Maybe not. But I know what I see. I know what I feel when I look at you." Her chest tightened. She stood abruptly, needing distance. "It's getting late. We should both." The lights flickered. Then total darkness. A gasp escaped her lips before she could stop it. "It's just the storm," Lucas said calmly, rising from his chair. I'll get a flashlight," Clara murmured. She moved, but not fast enough. In the dark, they collided. Hands fumbling, fingers brushing, bodies too close. She turned quickly, but his hand found hers firm, steady. "I'm sorry," he whispered, but he didn't let go. She stood frozen. The wind howled beyond the window. Rain lashed against the glass. Inside, the only sound was their breathing. "Clara." He said her name like a confession. She turned her head slightly, trying to see him through the shadows. His presence was overwhelming. She could feel the heat radiating from his skin, smell the faintest trace of something citrus and sharp. "Luca," she said, voice trembling. "This is a mistake." "I know," he answered. But I'm not sorry for how I feel. A flash of lightning illuminated the room for one breathtaking second. She saw him, his face open, eyes vulnerable, lips parted with something like hope. And then he leaned in and kissed her. It was a soft, uncertain kiss, full of hesitation, full of fear, but also full of something else, something they hadn't dared name until now. When the power surged back on, the room bathed in light again. They pulled apart instantly, both breathless, both wide-eyed. Clara took a step back, her heart pounding. "This cannot happen," she whispered. Luca didn't speak. He simply nodded. But the silence between them screamed. The morning after was not filled with sunlight. The storm had passed, but its memory clung to the house. Wet sidewalks, gray clouds, a hush that settled over everything like a veil. Clara moved through the kitchen on autopilot, preparing breakfast as she always did. Eggs over easy, toast just barely browned, coffee dark and hot. Routine was a lifeline now. Familiarity was armor. Peter entered first, yawning as he rubbed his shoulder and mumbled something about sleeping wrong. She smiled, said nothing. He sat at the table, flipping open the paper like nothing had changed, because for him, nothing had. Luca appeared minutes later. He greeted Peter with a casual morning, then turned to her. The smile he gave her was soft, knowing, dangerous, and it set off a tremor in her chest. They sat together, the three of them, at a table that suddenly felt too small. Each time Luca's fingers brushed hers when they reached for the sugar or the butter, Clara felt it like a spark. And each time she forced herself to breathe, to look away, to pretend. Peter didn't notice. Of course he didn't. He asked for more jam. He talked about a TV show she knew he'd fall asleep during. And Clara nodded, refilled his coffee, and tried not to fall apart. After breakfast, as she cleared the plates, Luca stood again. "I'll help," he offered. "No," she said too quickly. "I've got it." But he was already beside her, sleeves rolled, hands reaching for the dish rag. It was too familiar now. Too easy to fall back into that charged quiet. She didn't want it. And yet she didn't stop him. They worked in silence. Then, mid-task, his hand brushed against hers. Again. And this time she pulled away quickly. "Luca, please," she said quietly, her voice barely above the clink of the dishes. He stopped. "We should talk." "There's nothing to talk about." His brow furrowed. "You really believe that?" She didn't answer, just kept scrubbing. He waited. Then finally he said, "I know what happened last night scared you. Scared me too. But we can't pretend it didn't mean anything." She turned sharply, her voice tight. It was a moment. One that never should have happened. Luca stepped closer, not touching her, just close enough that she felt it. "Clara, you kissed me back." Tears stung behind her eyes. "That doesn't make it right." "Maybe not," he said. "But it makes it real." She shook her head. "You don't understand. If Peter ever finds out, he won't." Luca cut in, his tone calm, almost dismissive. "You don't know that," she hissed, spinning to face him fully now. "And even if he never does, I'll know. I'll carry this. Every day." Luca's voice was lower now, firm. "And what exactly are you carrying? Guilt? Or the fact that someone finally saw you?" Clara flinched. His voice softened. "Do you even remember what it's like to be touched with intention? To be looked at like you matter?" She pressed her hand to her chest, as if to still her heart. "That is not your place." "I know," he said. "I know I'm not supposed to feel this. But I do. And I think maybe you do too." There was a beat of silence so sharp it felt like something breaking. Then Peter's voice drifted in from the living room. "Clara? Have you seen my glasses?" Clara blinked, breath hitching. "I need to go." Luca stepped back. "I'm not going to apologize for what I feel." "Then don't," she whispered. But don't ask me to stay in it with you. Later that evening, Clara sat on the guest bed, folding laundry, trying to regain some kind of normal. The clothes were crisp, the room quiet, but her mind wouldn't settle. Not after the look in Luca's eyes. Not after the weight of his words. She didn't hear him approach until he was standing in the doorway. "We need to talk," he said. She didn't look up. "There's nothing more to say." "There is." He stepped inside and gently closed the door behind him. She sighed, folding the last towel. "This has to stop, Luca. It's over." He moved closer. "Is it?" Her eyes snapped to his. "Don't do this. I'm not trying to make this harder. I just need to know, why are you so afraid? Is it because of what people might think, or because you feel something real and don't know what to do with it?" She swallowed hard. "You don't understand what love looks like after 20 years. It's not fire. It's quiet. It's partnership. Is that what this is?" Luca asked, gesturing vaguely. "A partnership where you fold laundry in silence while the man you married forgets to ask how you are?" Her voice broke. "Stop." He took a breath, steadied himself. "Clara, I'm not asking you to do anything. I just want you to stop pretending that this, what we are, isn't real." She finally looked at him. Tears welled but didn't fall. "That's exactly why it has to end," she whispered. "Because it is real." Days passed, but the moment stayed. Clara tried to act normal. She woke early, made breakfast, cleaned, folded laundry with obsessive precision, and maintained polite small talk with Peter. She avoided being alone with Luca. She avoided mirrors too. Every glance felt like a confrontation with herself. But despite her best efforts, nothing felt untouched by what had happened. The house felt smaller, the hallway narrower. Even the silence had changed. It wasn't the gentle quiet of routine, but something heavier. A silence full of restraint, memory, and unspoken things. She heard Luca moving about the house, always just a room away. When she walked past his door, she heard the low thrum of music or the faint scrape of a chair. He wasn't avoiding her. But he wasn't seeking her either. Not yet, and somehow that made it worse. One afternoon, she walked into the living room and caught sight of him through the window. Luca sat on the back porch steps, shoulders hunched, elbows resting on his knees. He looked younger there, lost in thought, alone in a way that stirred something maternal and dangerous all at once. She paused. Then slowly, against her better judgment, stepped outside. The air was cool, damp from a morning rain. The garden still shimmered slightly with leftover droplets. The wooden steps creaked as she lowered herself beside him, keeping a careful distance. He glanced sideways. "Didn't think you'd come out." "I needed air." He gave a soft nod, returning his gaze to the yard. They sat like that for a while, silent. Not touching, not looking. Then he spoke. "Do you ever wonder if we're all just living someone else's life? Like we took the wrong turn once and just stayed on that path out of obligation?" She didn't answer immediately. Then quietly, "All the time." He looked at her. She didn't meet his eyes, but she could feel his gaze, patient, steady. "It wasn't supposed to happen," she said softly. "But it did. Now, I don't know how to exist in this house without hearing it." "Hearing what?" "The echo," she whispered, "of what we did, of what I let happen." Lucas sat still for a long moment. Then his voice, lower than before, said, "It wasn't just you. I was there too." "That doesn't make it better." "No," he admitted. "But it makes it honest." That evening, as Clara moved around the kitchen, she found herself slipping, dropping a glass, leaving the kettle on too long. Her mind was full of his words and worse, his silences. Peter entered, kissed her on the cheek, asked if she wanted to watch something together. She nodded, grateful for the distraction, grateful for him. And yet, when they sat on the couch, and his hand rested on hers out of habit, she felt nothing. Nothing but the absence of what shouldn't have been. Later that night, Clara stood at the bathroom sink, brushing her hair in the mirror. Her face looked pale, older, but there was something else there too, like a flicker beneath the surface, something she couldn't wash away no matter how hard she tried. A knock came at the door. She froze. "Yeah," she called out. "It's me." Luca's voice. Soft. Careful. "Can we talk now? A beat?" "Then you don't have to open the door. I just need to say something." She gripped the edge of the sink. "You don't have to be afraid," he said through the door. "I won't cross the line again. I promise. But I won't pretend that I don't care about you. I won't erase what we shared just because it's complicated." Her breath trembled. She closed her eyes. "I care about you too much to pretend," he added. "Even if all I can do now is stay away." She didn't open the door. Couldn't. But long after his footsteps faded down the hall, she stayed rooted to the spot, her reflection blurry through tears she refused to let fall. Because the truth was, she didn't want him to forget. Time didn't heal. It simply dulled the edges. Clara resumed her role, the quiet wife, the polite stepmother, the ever-present caretaker of a home that no longer felt like hers. She kept busy, constantly, scrubbing things that didn't need cleaning, folding already folded linens, rearranging shelves that hadn't changed in years. The problem wasn't what she was trying to fix. It was what she was trying to avoid. Luca no longer entered rooms she was in, not directly. They passed each other in hallways like strangers. Not avoiding, just circling. Careful, cordial, torturous. Their conversations were brief, shallow, always in front of Peter. And yet, every now and then, their eyes would meet in a moment too long for comfort. That was when Clara knew distance was a myth. One evening, Peter had fallen asleep on the couch again, snoring gently as a baseball game played to itself on the screen. Clara draped a blanket over him and turned the volume down. The house was dim, lit only by table lamps and the blue glow of the TV. She was heading toward her bedroom when she passed Luca's door. Ajar just slightly. From inside, music played softly, something instrumental, moody, unfamiliar. She hesitated. Just for a second, and that was enough. "Clara," his voice called gently. "It's all right. I'm not going to say anything. I just don't want to feel like a ghost in my own house." She could have kept walking. She should have. But she didn't. She stepped into the doorway. He sat at the edge of his bed, barefoot, elbows resting on his knees. He looked tired. Not physically, emotionally. Like someone carrying a weight no one could see. "You're not a ghost," she said softly, "but I feel like one. Around you. That's not fair." He looked up. "Then help me understand what this is. Are we just pretending now?" "We're surviving," she replied. "That's different." He let out a breath, the kind that comes from days of holding things in. "I'm trying to respect your space. But I can't undo how I feel." "I don't expect you to," she whispered. "I'm not asking for erasure, Luca. I'm asking for quiet." "I can give you silence," he said. "But not indifference." Those words hung in the air. She nodded once and turned to leave. But just before she closed the door, she said without looking back, "Some nights I miss the silence we used to have. Before it was filled with everything we can't say." The next morning, she found a note tucked beside the coffee pot. Just one line in Luca's handwriting. "I'll be out late tonight." Just giving us both room to breathe. She stared at it longer than she should have. Then folded it once and placed it in the drawer, next to old recipes and forgotten receipts. The day passed in small rituals. She made soup. She dusted baseboards. She clipped herbs from the garden and arranged them in a jar by the sink. All the while, she listened for footsteps that never came. And when night finally fell, she sat at the kitchen table alone. No Peter. No Luca. Just the slow tick of the wall clock and the memory of a young man's voice saying, "I won't pretend." By midnight, he still hadn't come home. She told herself it didn't matter. That she was relieved. That this was safer. And yet, she stood at the window watching headlights pass that never turned into the driveway. In the distance, thunder rolled again. It was nearly 1 a.m. when Clara heard the car door. She had drifted off on the couch again, not from tiredness but from waiting. She'd told herself it wasn't waiting. Just resting. Just being near the front window in case something happened. When headlights flashed through the window and tires whispered across wet gravel, she sat upright, heartbeat accelerating. He was home. The engine stopped. The front door opened slowly. Luca stepped inside, careful, as if testing the weight of his own return. His eyes adjusted to the dim room and landed on her. Wrapped in a throw blanket, her feet curled beneath her. "You're still up," he said, quiet. "I wasn't trying to be," she replied. He walked in slowly. The silence between them was no longer heavy. It was soft, like the moment before a leaf falls. Fragile. "Sorry if I worried you," he added. "I just needed to get out." "I know." He removed his jacket and hung it gently on the back of a chair. There was something subdued about him tonight. Not defiant. Not reckless. Just real. "I sat by the water for a while," he said. "By the edge of town. No music. No phone. Just tried to feel nothing." She offered a soft, almost sad smile. "How'd that go?" He chuckled lightly. "Didn't work." Clara stood slowly, wrapping the blanket tighter around her shoulders. The air felt colder tonight, though it wasn't the weather. It was something else. A kind of quiet exposure. She took a few steps toward him, then paused. "I've been trying to stop feeling, too." Luca looked at her then, not with hunger, not with longing, but with deep, exhausted honesty. "And," she swallowed, "I'm not very good at it." The house creaked gently as they stood there, not touching, not speaking. Then thunder rumbled again in the far distance. A storm was building, one of those late summer tempests that showed up uninvited and stayed longer than they should. Luca's jaw clenched, then relaxed. He nodded, accepting what she didn't dare name out loud. "But we can't," she trailed off. "We haven't," he answered. "Not really." He was close now. Too close. Her breath caught in her throat. She could smell the faint scent of his skin, soap and rain. A quiet heat radiated from him, and it pressed into the hollow places inside her where affection had long stopped living. He leaned in slightly, not to kiss her, not to cross a line, but to be heard in a whisper. "I'm not trying to break your world, Clara. I'm trying not to disappear from mine." She closed her eyes. And that was the most dangerous thing she could have done, because when she opened them, she saw him not as her stepson, not as Peter's child, but as a man. One who saw her, heard her, needed her, and one she wanted. Later that afternoon, she tried to escape the thoughts by driving into town. She picked up groceries she didn't need, walked aisles she didn't recognize. She found herself lingering too long by the wine bottles. Then the candles. As if romantic distractions could smother moral clarity, she came home to find Luca on the porch, shirt damp with sweat, arms flecked with sawdust. He'd been fixing the broken garden gate. When he saw her, he didn't smile. Just stood, wiping his hands on a rag. "You okay?" he asked. "I don't know." He nodded like he understood exactly what she meant. That evening, as Peter dozed through another old Western, Clara sat beside him, motionless. Her eyes watched the flicker of the TV screen, but her mind was somewhere else entirely. Caught between guilt and gravity, every so often she felt Luca's movement in the house. A door opening, the creak of floorboards above her head. The world moved, but time didn't. Eventually, she retreated to her room, hoping solitude would offer relief. It didn't. A quiet knock came at the door. She froze. "Clara." Luca's voice, her breath stilled. "I'm not coming in," he added, voice muffled. "But I needed to say it just once." Silence. "I think I'm falling in love with you." Her heart dropped. Or lifted. Or both. She said nothing. She couldn't. His footsteps faded down the hall. Clara sat on the edge of her bed. Hands folded, mouth dry. She didn't open the door, but she also didn't sleep. The next morning arrived without ceremony. The sun cast a pale, muted light across the house as if even it understood something sacred and dangerous was unraveling within these walls. Clara moved quietly, cautiously. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like betrayal. Every ordinary gesture felt sharpened at the edges. She didn't speak to Luca. He didn't seek her out, but it didn't matter. Because something had shifted the moment he'd whispered those words through her door. "I think I'm falling in love with you." And even though she hadn't answered, the silence had spoken for her. By mid-afternoon, Peter was out running errands. The house was quiet in the way a held breath is quiet, something waiting, trembling on the verge of release. Clara was in the laundry room, folding towels that didn't need folding. She focused on the precise way corners met corners, how lines could be perfectly aligned, even if lives could not. Then behind her, she felt it again, that presence. She didn't turn. Luca's voice was low. "Careful. I was going to leave today." Her hands paused. "But I couldn't." She closed her eyes. "You should." "I know." Silence. "Why didn't you?" she asked, voice soft but cracked. "Because you didn't ask me to." She turned then, slowly, and faced him. Luca stood in the doorway, shoulders tense, eyes tired. His restraint was visible, carved into the way he gripped the frame as if to hold himself back. "I told myself I'd be the one to draw the line," he said. "But maybe the truth is we've already crossed it. We just did it with silence." Her throat burned. "Don't," she whispered. "Don't what?" "Don't make me feel seen," she said. "Don't make this harder than it already is." He stepped forward 2 slow paces. "You were already seen, Clara. I just had the audacity to say it out loud." The air between them was electric, charged with fear, desire, grief, need. 1,000 words sat unspoken between their breaths. "You're not mine," she said, shaking her head. "You never were." "But I wanted to be," he whispered. They stood close enough to feel the heat radiating between them, but not touching. It was worse than touching. "I dreamed last night," he said, voice barely above a breath, "that I was in a room with you and neither of us said a word. We just looked. And that was enough. But when I woke up, I couldn't remember your face. Just the ache." Tears pooled in Clara's eyes. She looked away. "I want to stop this," she said. "I'll walk away," he replied. "If you tell me to." More silence. But she didn't say the words. She couldn't. Her hands reached for the towel on the counter, desperate for distraction. But when their fingers brushed as he helped, the stillness shattered. The towel dropped, and this time neither of them picked it up. They stood facing each other. No words, no pretense. And then he kissed her. Not like last time when guilt danced behind every breath. This kiss was deliberate, slow, declarating, and she kissed him back. Her fingers found his shoulders. His hand cradled her cheek. Their bodies leaned into one another as if this moment had always been inevitable. It didn't last long. It couldn't, because Clara pulled away with a gasp, covering her mouth, trembling. "Oh God!" Luca didn't speak. He just stared at her with the quiet declaration of someone who already knew the damage had been done. Clara backed away, shaking her head. "This is too much," she whispered. We can't keep pretending we'll fix this by pretending it didn't happen. I'm not pretending, he said. But I'll stop. He walked past her, the space between them wider than before. This time not from silence, but from something far louder: choice. That night they didn't speak. The line had been crossed, not by accident, not in darkness, but in full daylight, with eyes wide open. And now nothing could be the same again. Morning came gently, too gently, the kind of light that doesn't pierce but lingers, almost like apology. Clara stood in front of the mirror, brushing her hair with slow, even strokes. Her reflection didn't look different, but she was. Her skin was the same. Her eyes were the same. But inside something had cracked. And from the crack, something else had begun to bloom. She wasn't sure she liked what she saw. Downstairs, Peter sat at the kitchen table, sipping his coffee, solving a crossword puzzle. The television muttered in the background. He smiled up at her as she entered, warm, familiar. "Morning, sweetheart." She smiled back. Automatically, she made toast, poured juice, placed vitamins beside his plate. And yet, every gesture felt like the last breath of a language she no longer spoke. Luca was gone. No note this time. No sound. No lingering cologne in the hallway. Just absence. And somehow that hurt more than any words he could have left behind. By mid-afternoon, Clara stood in the laundry room again, surrounded by baskets, towels, and the soft scent of lavender. But she didn't fold anything. She just stood there, staring at the machine, listening to the hum of a cycle she had started but couldn't finish. She felt the tears before she knew they had risen. They spilled, not from guilt or even shame, but from something deeper. The grief of finally knowing herself. Because for the first time in years she had wanted something, and for a brief, trembling moment, she had reached for it. That night, she sat next to Peter on the couch, his hand resting absent-mindedly on her thigh. She leaned her head on his shoulder, as she had done countless times before. He looked over at her and smiled. "You've been quiet lately." She hesitated, then nodded. "Just thinking." "What about?" Clara looked at him, really looked, about how she had lived her life in devotion. About the quiet ache of becoming invisible, about the danger of being seen, and about the one person who, without permission, had reminded her that she still existed beneath it all. She didn't speak those things. Instead, she smiled. Nothing important. Later, as the house settled into sleep, Clara stood in the hallway alone. Luca's door was open. Empty. She stepped inside. The room was bare, clean, folded still, but on the desk, left deliberately, was a single photo of the garden she loved, taken during the last storm, the petals glistening with rain, the gate repaired. A soft note scrawled on the back. "You made this house beautiful, even when no one saw it." "I did." She held it to her chest. And for the first time in years, she let herself cry. Spring came early. The garden bloomed brighter that year. Clara spent more time outdoors. She laughed louder with neighbors. She painted again badly but joyfully. Peter noticed. "You seem lighter lately." "Maybe I am," she said. Not because she forgot Luca, not because she stopped wanting, but because for the first time in a long time she had chosen herself, even if it meant living with the ache. Some lines once crossed can't be uncrossed, but they can teach you who you are. And that sometimes is the beginning, not of what was forbidden, but of what was finally true. This story is a work of fiction and is intended for mature audiences only. It explores complex human emotions and relationships within morally challenging situations. All characters, names, and events are entirely fictional. Any resemblance to real persons, living or dead, is purely coincidental. We do not promote or condone infidelity or inappropriate relationships. The purpose of this content is to provoke thought, reflection, and emotional insight into the human condition.